very much, Bindu. That was an amazing panel. Welcome, everyone, to a more perfect supply chain panel at the State of the Art conference. I'm Nandish Tella, a senior product manager at Abacus, and we are honored to have three amazing supply chain thought leaders with us as panelists. I would like to ask the three panelists, Babu Kuttala, Gus Shahin, and Nathan Hewitt, introduce themselves in that order and share insights into their background and their AI journey.
Very good. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Babu Kuttala. I'm the head of data analytics at ABB. We are a $30 billion industrial manufacturer, predominantly focusing on electrification products, robotics, industrial automation, and large motors and automation. And we, as you can see, by our product portfolio, we are a B2B and operate over 130 countries with over 600 factories and roughly over 100,000 employees. So for us, AI means with the robotics, and we have a lot of AI already built in our robots and some of our motors. Now our journey is how we are going to digitize some of the services and products using AI capabilities. At the same time, also, how do we automate and digitize the back office process, especially coming to supply chain and operations. And I am more focused on the back office side to automate supply chain, finance, and operation side.
Thank you, Babu. Gus, you want to know?
Oh, yeah, sure. Gus Shahin, thank you. I'm the CIO here at Flex, and I also run what we call Flex Business Systems or business processes for the company. So, the analytics team also is under me, of course. And then, just to give an update on Flex, we're, again, a global supply chain solutions company. So we manufacture for a vast majority of the OEMs. And the core part of our business is really managing material and supply chain, right? So if you think of our business, we procure material from all over the world. We assemble it, manufacture it, put it together, and ship it out. So we also operate in many different countries, 35 countries, and we have about 160,000 employees, about 100 factories around the world. So supply chain optimization is absolutely key. It's the heart and soul of our business. Managing the speed of the supply chain is really important for us. And that's where we're trying to apply quite a bit of AI and analytics, really. How do we optimize the inventory levels? How do we move assets much faster, bring in the right material when you need it at the right spot, and ship it out as quickly as possible, because that has a huge impact on your balance sheets, of course.
Thank you, Gus. Nate, do you want to go next?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Nandish and Bindu, for having me. This is great content so far. Really enjoying the information here. I work for Klein Tools. Klein Tools is a company that specializes in hand tools, but also every tool that is kind of needed for professionals. Everything from construction, iron workers, anybody using tools all day, every day, or anyone who just needs a really high quality tool. Buys Klein Tools. So I'm the executive director of e-commerce, and I'm helping our supply chain by using all these different digital signals we receive from various customers, Amazon, Home Depot, Walmart, et cetera, trying to take all of that data and then push that to our supply chain team to stay ahead or get updates on when things are changing with our listings, with our items, to increase our fill rate and make sure we have product when we need it, where we need it, to get the most amount of sales possible for the company, for the brand. Yeah, that's a quick overview on me. Back to you.
Thank you, Nate. Thank you, everyone, for walking us through your incredible backgrounds and journeys. Moving on to the next question, can you please throw some light on how the supply chain operations at your company work, the top challenges faced, and how you think AI can help address some of these challenges?
Very good. So, Nandish, as I mentioned, in an ABB, we have almost 2 million parts we buy, and we manufacture over 50,000 products, right? So this is a very complex operation, and we are basically sourcing our raw material from pretty much all over the world. So optimizing this is just very, very critical for us because we cannot have too much inventory or too less inventory, right? And so there are a lot of traditional way of doing this. Where AI is going to come to picture for us is when it comes to action recommendation engines to our users, right? To really drive the customer experience. I give a great example when we happened with the COVID. That was a big challenge for us because we have to know that, okay, who are the vendors are affected by this, right? Or who are the suppliers are going to be affected by this, and what factories are going to be impacted by this, and how exactly is going to happen to our on-time delivery, or how exactly is going to happen with our customer experience. So there is no traditional way of doing things. So that's where we start looking at AI, more artificial intelligence kind of capabilities to really recommend how to recommend our customers, optimize our supply chain channels, and also making sure that the factories are not impacted by this, and also availability of our inventory also. So there are so traditionally our operations is purely depend upon the supply chain, especially when it comes to the customer service. So because for them, for a customer experience, on-time delivery is super, super critical. So there's a huge financial impact. So having a very optimized supply chain is very critical for us, especially with the level of complexity we have. And so for that, we started using AI capabilities to really provide action recommendation to our users to optimize the supply chain. Back to you, Nandish.
Thank you, Babu. That was very insightful. Gus, do you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, very similar to what Babu said. I mean, supply chains are definitely getting more complex. You have operations that are becoming very global. The supply base is getting fragmented and moving around. As you know, you want to service the customers, and then you also have to plan for the reverse logistics side of it, right? The repair and so on. So all that means you're getting a lot of data from so many disparate systems, really, at the end of the day. How you make sense of that data is super complex. I think the traditional tools are going to struggle with that. That's where I think you're going to need a lot of AI to help you. For us, it's even a little bit more challenging because we don't really control the demand, right? The demand comes to us from the ABBs and the folks, and we have to fulfill that demand. And like Babu said, with COVID, there was a ton of disruption, shortages all around, customers getting panicked. Do I order this much, or do I order this much to make sure I can deliver this much? And we have to optimize as well. Everyone needs to optimize. You can't have too much inventory. You'll tie up all your cash. It'll become a problem for the company. And I think that's where AI really helps out. I think we've done a good job with our visibility. I think that's helped through COVID for sure, but we're definitely working on embedding more AI to help us further streamline and optimize. And there's a ton of opportunity for sure.
Agree. There's a ton of opportunity, and for us at Klein Tools, when I started, and similar to one of the previous panelists, a lot of the business is managed by spreadsheets, previously, and having all these data signals and not using them to forecast and get in front of the business was an early mission for me to help accomplish, and special thanks to Bindu and Abacus too for really helping us really kind of pull all these data points together to really start using these signals to educate our team on, hey, what we need to do next to pull this forward. With our company, similar to Babu, we have a couple thousand SKUs, hundreds of customers, various spikes in demand. A human can't keep track of that. So with help of Abacus and team, we've really started to build out some different models, anomaly model, things like that, to look at how we can better forecast and stay up front of that. Top challenges for us, I think, was initially building the kind of the framework and architecture for the company, the data to get the signals we need to action. But then there's also the trust factor, right? Of there's been humans managing this that kind of know the business, and then starting to trust the data. It has been a challenge, and kind of that merge over from human to trusting the data has been a top challenge.
That was very insightful. Good to know that optimizing supply chains is super important, and it's also really impactful, and I think something very important for all of your businesses. In this context, how do you think about, like, in this context, speed is really important. Like optimizing the supply chain in time is really important because every day is $1 lost. So in that context, how do you think about building an in-house AI solution versus using some open source tools versus using a vendor like us?
Are we just going to go with
I'll take that one.
Sorry?
Oh, go ahead, Gus.
No, I was just going to say, like, we're not an AI company, right? We're not a software company. So for sure, we have a few data scientists scattered. They're a little bit siloed, I would say, in different groups, depending on the business needs. But for sure, we're working with companies like Abacus as well. I don't think some of the big commercial products out there are good enough for us. They don't really, they don't scale, and they're not, focused on our actual problem. They're very generic, if you will. So having a group like Abacus for sure makes a big difference for us. So it's going to be a mix for us, really. It depends on the solution, what we're trying to solve. In some cases, the subject matter expertise is in-house most of the time, and you can get at it with one or two data scientists and build a quick solution. In other cases, like in this supply chain area where we're using Abacus quite a bit, I think we need to rely on companies like Abacus for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is a key, right? I mean, one thing, what COVID taught us, the speed, right? So traditionally, if you look at ABB and all, we do SIOP like once a month. Well, that's not going to work anymore for us, right? Because you really need to do on a weekly basis, even daily basis, you need to do the planning. And especially when it, like Gus mentioned, we are like a factories. Factories has the lowest turnover. The people that work generations, right? So in order to go and teach them and changing them to use some of these capabilities in a much faster phase is very critical. So this is not like having an SAP implementation we can do for next 2 years, right? This is literally, we need to do literally in days. Otherwise, it will have a huge customer impact. So that's where companies like Abacus.AI is stepping in, coming with, okay, how you can deliver this much faster and much quicker to meet the immediate need. Because as I said again, we cannot wait for a longer time. And these are each factory, even though the problem is similar, but each factory operates in a different fashion, right? The different supply segment, different environment, different risk. So analyzing this data very quickly with some very smart leaders, it's much more, it's kind of a prerequisite nowadays. And that's where we are really taking the advantage of solutions like Abacus.AI is providing.
I'd agree fully. Yeah, our company is a 165-year-old family-owned business, kind of old school, and we don't, we rely on the expertise of people that are in the field, hosting conferences like this to really get our best foot forward and position ourselves to continue to win our business. So yeah, from our perspective, and especially kind of getting the foot in the game, maybe even a little bit late, relying on someone like Abacus to really understand the nuances of our business and the complexities and the challenges and all that is a personalized approach that some of the out-of-box solutions I don't think would have ever addressed. So yeah, definitely. I think having kind of that personalized solution, and we have some resources on our side that can help streamline the data and build the data lake and visualize it in a way for us to action and things. But definitely the expertise with Abacus has been perfect for our situation.
Thank you. That's really great to hear. And based on one of the previous points that you mentioned, Nate, which was related to like the human elements and the trust elements and AI, what are some of the organizational challenges that all of you have faced while implementing AI in the supply chain management, and some of the approaches that have worked for you, some of the approaches that haven't, and what would you suggest someone who is looking to implement some of these solutions in their organizations?
So,
well, yeah,
so go ahead. Sorry, Gus. So go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. I was just going to say that, from our side, I think realizing that there was opportunity, first off, like we have all this data, we have all these signals, and getting leadership on board to understand, like, we need to action this. We need to build a plan, a path to take all this data insights and really inform our supply chain team on what's happening. Like, for example, we had a SKU, an item that was selling pretty well, and then there was Amazon decided to put a coupon on it for kind of no reason without telling us, and all of a sudden it ranked #1 bestseller in 24 hours, and it was like a top 10 in all of the kind of tools category on Amazon, which supply chain needs to know about, because they're going to see a huge spike in orders the next few weeks. If we don't have machine learning kind of looking at that, keeping track of our business, reading these signals, we're going to get blindsided by a large order and not be able to fulfill it. So I think first getting that kind of organizational alignment up top about there is a problem and there is a need to solve these problems, building the structure, and then kind of it's been a challenge to get some of our kind of old school thinking people that have been with the company 20, 30 years that have done it the same way for a long time to open their mind up to this. And so, I think education and showing case studies and other kind of success paths have also been helpful. Babu?
Yeah. Yes, thanks, Nate. And I echo what Nate mentioned. Most of the time, when we work on this back office supply chain, it all starts with BI, right? Business intelligence analytics, right? And if you look at most of the organization, where does BI start? At the corporate boardrooms, right? Or at the headquarters. But this case, it will not work like that way when it comes to supply chain. So what we looked at our approach is we started from the factory floor, because that's where we can give more AI and the recommendation. And you can see, like what Nate mentioned, the result the next day. So the minute we are giving some, the inventory forecasting, and that is correlated to our production planning to a assembly shift supervisor or a inventory, planner within the factory, he's making decisions at the right moment, and we will see the next day in our impact, right? So that is a big change, and that's where we are spending most of our time. Okay, how do we go to factories and do an observational view of the customer, and how do they make the decisions, and how we can provide, leverage AI is a kind of more an augmented a tool for them to make these kind of decisions. And that is a big challenge, right? Because as I mentioned again, the people in these factories working for ages. So they have a lot of, I would say, trust on what they do. So now they are going to again change, you need to look at trust these type of recommendations or these type of tools. It's quite a challenge for them. But when we started sit with them and explain them, I think they are very receptive, and I think and we started seeing some results out of this change. Back to you, Gus.
Yeah, I mean, look, echoing both. It's at the end of the day, it's a mindset change for the company. I agree. Nate mentioned you need exec support for sure. You have to have that support to drive it down. Otherwise, you're not going to make some traction. One way, and the way to do it is like Babu said. I think you can take some easy, quick win scenarios where AI is very mature, computer vision, just scanning stuff instead of humans and all that. It's very mature. You can show quick wins, and then you can start solving, much more complex problems. But you have to have the quick wins for sure, and you have to have the exec support. And it's going to take time. I mean, we talk to customers all the time and say, hey, look, the model says this is what we think you're going to ship. Of course, at the beginning, they're like, no way, throw that away. But then as you start showing them over time, and they realize that it's actually more accurate than what they've been giving us, it completely changes the way they think, and they start taking it more seriously. It's for sure a work in progress, but it's got to be done in the right steps for sure.
Thank you, everyone. That's very, very, very insightful. Moving on, slightly related to the previous question. Now, given that there is a huge human element involved, how do you look at hiring AI talent in your organization to solve these kind of problems? What skills do you look for, and how do you structure your teams to achieve the best possible results?
I mean, like we said earlier, we're not looking to we're not a software company or an AI company by me. We're a manufacturing company. At the end of the day, our margins are very different than a lot of those companies out there. So for sure, we'll have pockets of data scientists that can sit down with subject matter experts and probably solve smaller, less critical problems. But I think for the larger, big impact, very critical problems like supply chain optimization, where we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, we'll rely on the experts out there, and picking the right experts makes a big difference, right? Which companies you go with, a big difference, right? You have to make sure you have the right chemistry and so on and so forth.
Yeah, exactly. So it's an interesting problem when it comes to talent, right? You can go to one extreme of having a hardcore data scientist who is an expert in Python programming or programming, which pretty much has no idea how exactly a business process works, right? So we need to have a blended skills. The first thing, in order to build this AI, is we really need to understand how exactly a business process works in a supply chain, right? How do we procure a product, or how do we kind of plan this in our inventory, right? And once you understand the business process, it's pretty much easy to inject this in. Okay, yes, now you can use a data scientist to create some kind of models and apply or ingest or integrate that with your business processes. So for us, it is a challenge to get this combination skill, right? There's not many people that are out there who really know end-to-end, I would say, a business process of particular this, the supply chain side. Then you also need some skills. Okay, how do I digitize this business process using data, right? Then we need to have data scientists to build these data models to, implement these kind of capabilities. And we couldn't able to, it's practically impossible to find a person who knows all those things. So we kind of use a blended kind of a group of resources to do this kind of capabilities. And that's where, one of the things it was very attractive for Abacus.AI is when we worked with the Bindu and team, when we talk about the model, it's pretty much they're giving us, okay, here's the model you can use. The thought leadership and the know-how was coming out from that Abacus.AI type of organizations. Back to you, Nate.
Yeah, no, I'd say Gus and Babu nailed all the major points that I would have added as well. Understanding the business process is crucial, I think, and having the mixture of, I would say, a data science or machine learning background, as well as really taking the time to listen to the business process, as Babu mentions, because if you don't really kind of understand the long game or the real outcome here that we're trying to achieve, and then how we can take this data and actually action it, it's spinning tires. So yeah, I agree with both Gus and Babu on points there.
And also, Nandish, just want to echo, there's so many things you can do. I want to give you two examples. We found that with using cognitive computing on text analytics. So an example, there are so many our raw material coming, the shipments are staying at ports because not having proper documentation. And this information was sitting in literally in commons in our ERP systems, right? So analyzing and putting some cognitive analytics around this commons data really help us to optimize some of the part of the supply chain, this custom clearance, right? The same thing with our, when we get this customer complaints and this feedback and this, when the quality team enter some of the defect information, these all information in unstructured data. So analyzing this data and giving the feedback to suppliers is really, helping us to eliminate the waste, and improve the quality. That means, improve our on-time delivery, which means, more revenue coming into ABB. So there are some examples. It's not a traditional in the supply chain. You can use AI kind of capabilities.
That makes a lot of sense, especially the point where understanding the business needs is as important as just modeling and creating models based on the data that you give. I think especially here when we are working with customers, we also tend to keep that in mind and try to understand the business problem well before actually casting it as a data science problem, so we can achieve the best results. That's really insightful from you guys on that. moving on to another supply chain question, I think this is slightly forward-looking, slightly based on the past. How do you think the supply chains have evolved? What is the supply chain journey that you have seen during your long tenure at these companies? And how do you see it evolve over the next 5 to 10 years, especially with cloud computing and AI giving a lot more boost to it?
Yep. I mean, look, I can talk for Flex real quick. I mean, it's definitely evolved, but there's a long way to go. And I think AI is going to unleash a lot in supply chain management for sure. There's a lot more we can do. We've digitized the supply chain. Like Babu said, BI is pretty big now. We have visibility. We can pretty much get real-time visibility into our supply chain. I think the next step would be if AI can actually tell us what to do next and give us some, so you're a little bit more proactive than reactive for sure. I mean, you can change anything in a supply chain. The only thing you can't change is time. And I think AI can help us improve on time. And that's really important in the supply chain. So I think there's long ways to go for sure. And, if you think about in our environment and maybe Babu's with Industry 4.0, you're adding sensors to everything right now. You're digitizing the entire manufacturing sites. You're getting so much more data up front. If you can, do that at the supply base as well, you have so much insight there, and you can definitely leverage AI to optimize that even further. So there's a long way to go.
I agree. I agree with the Gus. The biggest thing is going to be now the digital value chain, right? Because most of this processes within these big manufacturers are pretty much siloed or fragmented. Now it is time. The AI is going to build those, connect the dots. Anything from a after service to pre-sales has to be connected, and the supply chain is the middle of this. Right, so having AI is going to play a huge role to really digitize this value chain and make a difference and being a differentiation. And in order to becoming an innovative differentiator, when I say automating with action intelligence is going to be the key for the next 3-5 years.
Yeah, I agree completely with both. For us too, we're really in our infancy, and there's a long way to go. And really taking all these different signals, we have a huge footprint in our manufacturing too in America here with our USA manufacturing plants. And again, like you were both mentioning, sensors, more data than ever. With supply chain constraints globally, especially in China. Having this data available to us almost real time now, like we're talking about through BI and stuff too, there's ability to pivot, and maybe we won't source X and Y from Asia. We'll make that here, things like that. So there's a lot. I think we're really in our infancy and a long way to go. But I think for a lot of us, for people like me, kind of somewhat pioneers for our companies to get this going, it's going to pay dividends down the road completely. And like with that use case I mentioned, where a SKU goes from nothing to a huge seller overnight, stuff like that's going to be really important for our companies to be able to action and get in front of. And I can only see the need for our company using this and even rolling it out with some of Abacus services and various other departments beyond just the supply chain as well.
Thank you, everyone. This was really useful information. I think I think these are the questions that I have. And before we move on to any of the audience questions, maybe if you can share your closing thought on like AI in supply chain and like anything else that's not covered that you want to mention to the folks who are listening to this panel.
I'll kick that off.
Key point I want.
Go ahead, Nate. Yep.
Oh, so sorry. I was just going to mention, Ashton, what you're drawing there is super cool. I really thank you for illustrating some of our thoughts there. That's really cool to see kind of all of this visualized there. But just closing comments. I mean, if for people on the call, if you haven't spoke with Abacus, I would definitely recommend setting up a call for your company. It's at least having the kind of resource there to start the call start the process would be worth it. But for us, it's definitely been very worth our time and energy to go down this path. And again, we're only in our infancy, and we continuously are learning. And you know, like mentioned, I think from the previous panelists, like kind of having that roadmap for your company of where you want to go, what's the vision, you know, product lines that are important, and then getting leadership buy-off into a machine learning model to help supply chain and other departments as well is going to be crucial for survival of the fittest moving forward in business. And if you don't have that digital kind of network and infrastructure in place, it's not going to take long for your company to be in a bad way, you know, in a bad position. So overall, this is very important and next level future where we need to go with our businesses. And a lot of us are driving that internally, and appreciate being on this panel. Thank you for having me. Over to you, Gus.
Yeah, no, I mean, very similar. You know, if I'm sure you've heard that in many conferences, or you've heard it all everywhere, but if you're not digital and you're not making use of the data, then you're probably going to be left behind for sure. So I'm sure most of the companies are thinking that way. You know, we engaged with Abacus, probably similar to Nate. They have a great model to engage early. You don't have to go big, right? You can engage with small, simple use cases, prove out the value, get the buy-in, and then go from there. I think that's a great model because that helps you with the buy-in from the rest of the company, really. And you have to have that buy-in. And of course, like everyone said here, I mean, understanding the business process is key. We have the subject matter experts. We can you know, put them together with the experts at Abacus, and it doesn't take them long to kind of produce some really impressive models. So, you know, definitely looking forward to continuing to work with them and the future for sure. There's a lot coming.
Yeah, and I can echo that. And also, you know, it's time to look, you know, like some innovative way, or not in a traditional way, right? So, for example, look at COVID. Supplier risk is a big element, right? Which predominantly we look at from a compliance perspective, which is more than a compliance now, what we learned for the last 16 months, right? Same thing. If you look at the shortage of raw material like plastics and semiconductors, and every customer is ordering pretty much everything possible, right? And if you started, you know, stocking our inventory, we'll have a huge issue. So this kind of balancing, you know, is going to become very critical in upcoming, you know, I would say upcoming months, or you know, in like you know, Gus mentioned, this is why that understanding the business process is going to become very vital. And I think, you know, and also the speed, you know, using this kind of companies like Abacus.AI, we'll get that speed. We can try it out and do things much faster.
Thank you, everyone, for your time and also the great thoughts. Maybe we can take one question from the audience that I see here. I think we covered this in part before, but I'm just reading out the question. When your companies decide on hiring teams of data scientists or machine learning engineers, what are the most important considerations? Example, academic achievements, past projects, successes, interview performance, or some other, or combination of few good attributes. Any chance for newcomers? I think someone is looking for a job, so maybe if you guys can give some advice, that would be super useful.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's always a chance for newcomers, of course, and attitude is got to be, you know, they have to have the right attitude. We don't expect them to know everything, hit the ground running, but if they're willing to learn, you can be great at math and statistics and data science, but you still have to kind of learn the process, right? So I think it's all about attitude at the end of the day. And, you know, we're always looking for great people.
I agree with the Gus. You know, we predominantly look for hungry to learn, right?
Yep.
They're learning every day new things, especially when it comes to the businesses, right? The business process, you go to factories, ability to talk to, as I said, again, assembly line workers, shift supervisors, right? So that is one of the key skills that we look for, you know, how you can interact and collaborate.
Absolutely. I agree with both attitude, collaborative approach. And then, yeah, I mean, one thing that I always ask interviewees is, how are you staying up to date in your field? Like, what are you listening to podcasts or magazines, or like, how are you staying up to date in your field? And you usually learn a lot from that interview question, because some people are like, oh, I just like scroll my LinkedIn feed or whatever. That's not going to get you anywhere. Like, or it'll get you places, but I'm just saying, like, you really got to have some really kind of certain areas that you know is the knowledge that you're looking for, and tapping into that, and staying up to date with everything in your field is crucial. But to me, interview attitude goes a long way, kind of showing that you want to do it. You've done your research on the company before you showed up to the interview, and you want to work and drive results for the company is always clutch. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for their great insights and also the good word on Abacus. It's nice hearing thoughts from you. And thank you for all the audience who listened to the panel.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you.